This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey there, how's it going? I take part in a lot of game jams. I really like to try out new ideas or refine old ones that I think would make fun player experiences. And because of this, I'm regularly asked, how do I come up with so many different game ideas? Or some form of, I can't think of anything to make, how do I come up with good ideas? Which I have to say at first really caught me off guard. Coming up with ideas is never usually a problem for me. My issue is that I usually tend to have too many ideas, and the hard part is picking which one to pursue. But I forget that being creative is a practiced skill. Like nearly everything else, the more you do something, the easier it becomes. And creativity and coming up with ideas is no different. It's like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it becomes. However, that's not an answer that's going to help someone struggling with a creative block right now. So on top of all the advice in this video, and please remember these are my opinions, they may not be perfect, the key is to just keep doing it and it will become easier and easier. And while we're on the topic of easy, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is by far the easiest way to make your very own website, with fantastic features that make the process as painless as possible, whether you've built a website before or are jumping in for the very first time. I have 100% struggled with creating websites in the past, and so far using Squarespace has been an absolute breeze. As a content creator, the things I make tend to live on so many different websites all across the internet, so it's really great to have a central place to send viewers to really show off what I can do and what I'm all about, as well as host other common needs like an FAQ and community activities. On top of being super simple to use and create with, Squarespace is also incredibly easy to keep updated with straightforward, simple to use social sharing and blogging tools, as well as a whole host of analytics that will help you know what your audience likes and how to give them more of it. Be sure to check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Vimlark and use the coupon code VIMLARK to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So where do ideas come from? Well, when a mommy idea and a daddy idea really love each other... No, wait, that's not ideas. There really isn't one place you can point to where ideas come from. I made a YouTube community post asking where you get your game ideas, and what I learned is that there's no right answer. So I've broken it down into a few categories that may be worth trying if you ever find yourself creatively stuck. First, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. What am I calling a game idea? I'm referring to any idea that spawns the direction or focus of your project. It could be the plot hook your narrative game entirely depends on, or an interesting way to use an existing mechanic that you just thought of. This video will be looking through the lens of a game designer, but it doesn't mean that these will only work for games. The ideation process is pretty much the same across the board, I often find. Everything starts with an idea, but how do we pick the one that we roll with? After reading through all of your comments and adding my own thoughts as well, I've collected everything into 3 categories that I'm calling epiphany, restriction, and inspiration. Let's start with epiphany. These are the ideas that just come to you when you aren't expecting them. From your comments, in the shower, when falling asleep, and dreams were the most common answers by far. But there was also a really good representation from taking a walk and doing some mundane tasks. Basically, don't try so hard, and let your mind think of something else for a little while, which can often help lead to that aha moment. Epiphany ideas are great when they happen, but by their very nature, they tend to be somewhat unreliable. If you need to regularly come up with new ideas, waiting around for it to happen can cause some problems. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't pay attention when they come. Make sure to write the idea down. You can get a notebook, which I hear suggested a lot. They've never really worked for me. I tend to forget about them, lose them, not have a pen, whatever. But we all have a cell phone and any number of ways to store ideas on it. Personally, I have a couple different Google Docs that I use for spewing ideas onto. A lot of the times the ideas are absolutely terrible or they don't make any sense at all when I look at them again later. But just as often, there is a thing there that helps kickstart a full idea. Also, if you have long car commutes and you can't use your hands, I used to regularly use the voice recorder on my phone to get an idea down before I forgot. My favorite, and the way I advocate the most to help get ideas flowing, is to give yourself restrictions. If you've watched past videos, you've heard me talk about this before. The phrase restrictions breed creativity has been a mantra that I've lived by since I first heard Mark Rosewater say it a long time ago. Having some sort of requirement means that there's a place for your brain to start from. Instead of having to think of anything possible, now you need to think of what's possible that fits your criteria. Game jams are effectively this, as they usually have some element that gives you a focus or a restriction. I made a whole video about how game jams and restrictions are awesome. There's a card up top if you'd like to check it out. But if game jams aren't your thing, which they aren't for everybody, you can still give yourself restrictions with anything. From your comments, some of the ones I saw the most were to limit the mechanics, assets, or inputs you can use. Some examples could be things like you can't stop moving, mouse-only controls, 2 color palette, or only use these assets. Another fun one is to combine two different things and see how they work together. This can really help because now the focus becomes about how you make the two things work together as opposed to what to make in general. Again, with the restrictions, you have a really good jumping off point. For example, what would a platformer and a shoot 'em up look like if you combined them? Or what happens if you take a twin stick shooter and you stick it with a cooking game? If you've never tried this concept of taking two different things and sticking them together, I would highly recommend it. You usually end up coming out of it with things you would have never thought of otherwise. And last, but certainly not least for the restrictions category, there are always random idea generators you can find all over the internet. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of these, and I don't really use them that often, but one I have used in the past and I thought was a pretty neat approach is Random Icon by Danimator. It takes a different approach by giving you icons that you then have to interpret, so it's a bit more abstract and maybe worth looking into if you're interested. Inspiration and epiphany are pretty similar, but usually I think of inspiration to be a bit more proactive, whereas epiphany is a bit more passive where you wait for an idea. We all love inspiration. You look at some form of media and you pull ideas to change and adapt into your own. Have you ever been playing a game and thought, I wonder what it would be like if it had X, or if it was missing Y? And there you go, that's the start of an idea. Get to building. Of course, inspiration is pulled from everywhere, but in your comments, you mostly suggested things like playing games, watching TV, movies, videos, specifically devlogs on YouTube, studying history or myths or culture, or just looking at galleries of images. I've had several people recommend Pinterest to me many times. While I've tried it and haven't really gotten into it, I know for them, they find it invaluable. I know I've already said playing games, but to be more specific, a lot of people suggested playing game jam games because often people try out new and interesting ideas for jams. I really back this approach, and I would add in just playtesting other people's games can also help as well. I playtest community games every Friday, and I can't tell you how many ideas have probably spawned from those different play sessions. There's something about playing a prototype that just gets the creative juices flowing. I don't think I have to say this, but just to be safe, don't steal someone else's work and just remake exactly what they made and call it your own. That's not inspiration. That's copying. But do take elements and add your own spins and twists to it to create something new. I mean, that's what art's basically built on. As you can see, ideas can come from anywhere. Sometimes we can get so caught up in having the best idea that we end up not having any at all. And that's a really frustrating place to be, which can just keep compounding on itself until you finally give up. But remember, it's the act of being creative that makes being creative easier. So sometimes it's worth it to just run with an idea that may not be the best, but it's something and you can build on it and it can help lead to more in the future. You can't always rely on epiphany, but make sure to note it down when it does arrive. If you feel overwhelmed, limit your options to help avoid analysis paralysis. And make sure to try and check out lots of different things to help expose yourself to a wide variety of things to draw inspiration from. If you have other ways that I've missed, which I guarantee you there are loads, please leave them in the comments section below so others can see. I hope you found this helpful in some way, or at least entertaining. I'd like to send a huge thank you to everyone that shared where you get your ideas from. It was great to have the input of so many people, so it's not just all me. Thank you again to the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. Get your website ideas started today by clicking the link in the description. And a final huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters, especially Aaliyah Clone 13, Cortland Massam, David Scott, Nightfall, Jed, Kormai, Motzi Makes, Nazar Salim, Salty Pretzel, Scott Hansen, Soapy Gnome, Straight Up Gruntled, and Warren Stephen Rose. I really can't thank you all enough for the continued support. If you want to get in contact and chat with me, the best place to do that is to stop by my live streams at twitch.tv/Vimlark. I currently stream 4 days a week, there's a link down in the description. Or you can join our Discord community with a ton of other amazing people. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk with you next time. Have a good one. Later.